Yes.
So I have a comment more than a question. I know that you started out by talking about, ways to combat fears, including education. So I know that in Spanish-speaking countries, many times they have used infotainment or edutainment, the combination of, an entertainment program in which there's education that's needed. I know that when doctors were trying to get women to get mammograms, for example, years and years ago, many of the telenovelas or what are called here soap operas in Puerto Rico and in Mexico and such would have storylines that had a woman come in with breast cancer so that they could show that breast cancer is not a death sentence, for example, or that radiation therapy is not going to kill you. But not only that, to try to get people to think before those things happen, what do you do? And one of them is breast exams and mammograms. So that was very common. And it had to do with all kinds of different medical issues, as far as I remember. But the one about breast cancer was very clear and very effective when they looked back on that in terms of public health and what happened to patients.
No, and I love that example, right? I mean, it was, for those who didn't hear, it was basically talking about how oftentimes public health narratives would be interwoven into scripts for telenovelas, right, so the soap operas. One example I can think of would be a couple years back, back when the CDC actually had a budget. There was a preparedness feature that had zombies, right? So the CDC is like, okay, we need to tell people how to prepare for emergencies. What do people like? It was like, they like zombies. Like, hey, let's. So they actually did. It's actually kind of clever. They did a whole for the zombie apocalypse or any other emergency, here's what you should be concerned about. So no, I think that sort of public intervention really is very effective, as you pointed out, because it's subtle. It's not in your face. It's sort of kind of jokey, but it's also sort of it's part of the mainstream, right? So if you're at a health clinic and you're handing out flyers saying get vaccinated, that can work. All right, there's no magic bullet here. But if you can bring up people who are talking about, hey, I survived, right? I'm here because of medical treatment, right? So this is very effective. Like Ken Frazier, who used to be editor for Skeptic Inquirer magazine for many years. He had several bouts with cancer. Unfortunately, he died 4 or 5 years ago. But he would begin by telling people, I'm here because of science. I'm here because of medicine. Not alternative medicine, not homeopathy, not prayer. Medicine doesn't help me out. The flip side of that is, speaking about fear, is then you have, it's basically the power of the anecdote, right? So then you have people like Jenny McCarthy going on television and saying, my child has autism because he was vaccinated. And the audience are like, oh my God, this poor woman, she's crying, her disabled son. It's very powerful, right? And so you have to have these sort of counter narratives to sort of give the other side of the story. But that's excellent.
And the other thing about it is that it reaches many more people than me in the office telling a woman you need to get a mammogram.
Exactly.
Right? People love to be entertained.
Yeah.
And any program that entertains me and has this loyal following is a good way to reach thousands of people at a time.
No, absolutely, and that's why I think that's one of the underappreciated aspects of public health outreach is trying to, because you don't think about it, right? Like who, if you're gonna bring people into a room and say, how can each of us put forth these public health messages? You don't assume, oh, bring a soap opera scriptwriter. Like, oh yeah, we need someone from ER, right? Like, but yes, bring them in. Get them, say, hey, put a bug in the ear, say, look, this is what we're trying to do. And I mean, it can be difficult to quantify, right? I mean, you can, if after the telenovelas air, if the number of people showing up, women showing up for mammograms increases by 15%, is that due to the telenovelas? Is that due to more education? I mean, who knows? But it certainly can't hurt. And again, it sort of makes it more mainstream. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
How can I assuage the fear of my cousins in the Midwest who believe that the Persians have a nuclear armament that they can, within 6 months, deliver it to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and obliterate the whole city?
Yeah. That's a tall order, yes. So there's a couple things here. One of the ways to address misinformation is, and again, to be clear, there's no magic bullet, right? I and the organization I work for, we've been trying to mitigate misinformation for decades. There's no silver bullet in one way to do it. There are different ways that can be more or less effective. One of them is called pre-bunking. This is an approach that's been around for a few years. It's basically trying to head off misinformation before they get it, right? So trying to say, okay, well, if you're going to come at me with misinformation about the COVID vaccine or about immigrants, whatever else, you begin by saying, well, just so we know, this isn't true. That before they can get a word edgewise, like, oh. So it sort of cuts it off. In terms of like trying to mitigate those sorts of fears, so there's a couple. One would be to find out where they're getting the information from. Now that only goes so far, but it would help to. I'm guessing in this case it's probably some right-wing news. Alex Jones. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of that. So one way to do one approach would be to say, okay, well, okay, you've heard this. Here are other analyses, government reports, other people who intelligence community assessments, which have said that Iran is 6 months away from a nuclear weapon. So I mean, again, it's one of those things where the information is coming from a very specific angle to it. And so one way would be to say, okay, well, what are some of the belief adjacent assumptions, right? So for example, if the belief is that in 6 months Iran is going to bomb Milwaukee for whatever reason, the question is, well, ask them why. Like, okay, so I understand you believe that. I mean, there's no getting confrontational. It's sort of mixed bag, right? See, if you're at a family meeting, you don't really want to start a fight over dinner table, but you can say, okay, well, why would I'm just curious. So why do you think that Iran's going to bomb Milwaukee? And it's a fair question. Like so sometimes this is one of the techniques that I found. And a friend of mine, a guy named Mick West, he wrote a book called Escaping the Rabbit Hole. And in that book, he talks about addressing conspiracy believers. And one way to do it, the wrong way to do it, is to say, well, that's ridiculous, you're crazy, that's all bullshit, and then walk away. So that doesn't work, as you can imagine, because you're dismissing them, and it just reinforces to them that, well, you're just part of part of them, right? If you say, okay, well, that's interesting, explain how, tell me more. Like, okay, why do you think this is true? Number two, didn't Trump just bomb the hell out of most of their sites? And number three, why, even if it were true, why wouldn't they have done it years ago? And beyond that, why do you think that Milwaukee is going to be a target for this? And what you find, again, I can't speak for your cousin because but what you often find is that oftentimes they can't. Their knowledge of the idea is so superficial that they have a hard time defending it. Right? They can say, "Oh well, yeah. What about this?" Okay, well, interesting. So, how does this work? Like, well, I just heard it. Or they sort of instead of confronting them, you ask them to defend it gently, And again, it doesn't always work, but oftentimes, there's like, you see where like, okay, well, maybe this isn't entirely correct, because they don't have anything to offer. I'll give you one quick example. So, about 10, 15 years ago, I was at a big nerd fest called Dragon Con, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. It's like 50,000 cosplayers and nerds and sci-fi writers and people dressed like Darth Vader, anyway. And I was on a panel on conspiracy theories. I was one of the panelists. At the end of the panel, we opened up the audience Q&A, and one guy stood up, and he's obviously a 9/11 truther. And he had the microphone, and I'm like, here we go. He's like, okay, well, so I just want to ask a question. It's about 9/11. So there's this sort of audible like, all right, what you got? And he starts talking to me, and I was on the panel. He's like, well, on 9/11, this, and I said, well, hold on just a second, sir. He's like, I'll let you finish. You have the floor, you have the microphone. So just before, I just want to understand, so what happened on 9/11? He's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, the government, jet fuel can't melt steel, and these office workers were told not. I said, no, what happened on 9/11? You're saying the official story is wrong. That's fine. Tell us what happened. You have the mic. You have the information. What happened? He's like, well, I don't know, but you have to look at the motivation. Like, no. You're saying the official story is wrong. What's your story? Tell us what happened. Tell us who did what. And it was clear. And this wasn't a gotcha moment. I wasn't trying to be mean. And it was clear to the whole audience, if not to him, that he had nothing. It was all this God of the gaps argument. It's all this sort of anomaly hunting. It's like, well, and like, no, dude, you don't have a theory. You don't have a proposal. You don't have an explanation. You just have something you think is wrong. And at that point, he sort of gave up and wandered away. But that can be useful in dealing with your friends and neighbors. And just sort of like, okay, well, how does this work, right? You're telling me that that you're afraid of getting the COVID vaccination because people are dropping dead left and right. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, well, if you look at the numbers, most people have gotten vaccinated by now. They're still around. So clearly that can't be correct, right? Well, yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Well, reasoning doesn't always work.
Yes, absolutely.
I had a physical therapist who was telling me, this was during COVID, and he said, yeah, I just read that 10,000 people have died of vaccines, and they're hiding this. I said, 10,000, that's a rather perfect number.
Very round number.
Each of these 10,000 people have family members, don't they? So are they locked in the White House in the basement? I mean, I'm trying to get him to think reasonably, and he says, no, 10,000 people have died of the COVID vaccine. I read it. And no matter what I said, that tried to sound reasonable, didn't matter.
Well, one of the things that I've done, so I've turned the table. I've gotten some of those myself, right? So they come up with some number, and so I would say, okay, well, if they're hiding it, then how do you know about it? You're saying that no one knows about these 10,000 people, yet you do. So where did you get this? And it's like, well, I saw it on YouTube somewhere. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I think that explains it. And then sometimes I'll even go further on, because they'll get defensive, like, okay, well, you seem to know a lot about this. Like, what aren't you telling us? What don't you want us to know? And they're like, no, I'm like, no, you're saying this is being covered up. I think you know more about this than you're telling us. Like, what are you hiding? And then they start getting like you're part of the cover up. And they're like, they quickly yeah.
I'm curious what you think about, this comes up a lot in medical misinformation, especially like around vaccines and stuff. Is there a value to debates between real experts, and is it productive or counterproductive? I know it's the debate subject is a debatable
Right.
subject.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yes, the question was, and thank you for that. So the question was, is there value in structured debates between believers and skeptics, for lack of a better term? I have really mixed feelings about this. There was a famous debate about maybe 6 or 8 years long ago between Ken Ham and Bill Nye. And did anybody watch the debate? A couple, man, it was like a big thing. So I'm actually mentioned in that debate. The reason I mentioned that debate is that I wrote a piece for Discovery News about whether Bill Nye should debate Ken Ham, the famous creationist. And I said there are the main problem that I saw was that it gives this false equivalency, right? We have Bill Nye, and we have a dude who believes that Jesus rode dinosaurs. Okay, right? We have Kirk Cameron, the actor from Growing Pains, and we have Richard Dawkins. So let's put these two together and see who's right? But it was interesting because like Ken Ham saw that I had written that, and he quotes me, like he doesn't mention my name, I'm on one of his slides. Like Ben Radford said, okay, dude. But it was interesting because it was framed in such a way that it made it seem like I was like worried about Bill being trounced by this. I'm like, no, this is not what it's about. So I think that's my main concern. And so I'm of two minds about it. So on one hand, I am inherently in favor of debate. I think it's helpful. I think it's useful in many cases, assuming that you have people who are open-minded, right? If you have two people who are closed-minded, if there's literally nothing that you could say that would convince them, then it's a waste of time. But if you have people like, for example, I've spent time, among Bigfoot believers, ghost hunters, conspiracy theorists, all sorts of things, and I've had fruitful discussions. And sometimes I've changed their minds. I know this personally from dealing with them. They're like, "Wow, you kind of seem like an asshole, but we're actually here, and you seem kind of reasonable, right?" And so when you give people a chance to tell their story, and when you see that you're respecting their point of view, you may not agree with it, but you say, "Okay, you're a reasonably intelligent person. You believe this. Help me understand this." Like, for example, I was talking about earlier, like if you have a friend or family member who believes one of these things, should you get involved in a public debate about it? No. But it is demonstrably true that you can change minds on a micro level. I think that in terms of the bigger issues of these televised debates, I think there are dubious utility, partly because even the best framed debates aren't really debates. Presidential debates, right? Presidential debates aren't debates. We've all seen this, right? So they go up there, they have their script there with their talking points. They ask a question, they duck the question, and this is Democrats, Republicans, this is everybody. I'm not pointing fingers here. They're not debates in any meaningful sense of the word. So instead, what you get is you have people who are a recitation of each party's talking points. You have some gotchas, you're no Kennedy, or I knew Jack Kennedy, you're no Kennedy. Whatever, take your pick, and that's the takeaway. And so I wish there were genuine, active debates just among the public in general, and more discussion, because I think it's inherently a public good. But so I think that the debates as they are framed, which is sort of blood sport and political point, I don't think they're useful. Yeah.
Matter of fact, Richard Dawkins doesn't do debates anymore for that reason. You get the Ken Hams up there, or the other
Right.
people like him.
The Gish Gallops, yeah.
And matter of fact, the only time I've ever seen him kind of debate people, he's on a particularly English talk show, and he's talking to, it's not really religious, but it's a debate like that, so.
Right.
If you don't see him on stage anymore behind a podium.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of unfair because look, I have a couple of his books. I've met him. He's an evolutionary biologist. He's really great at what he does, But that doesn't mean you're good at other things, right? So it's always concerning when I see people stepping out into like debating. Like not everybody's good. Even if you're completely right, you can lose a debate because you're not a good debater. I'm not saying Dawkins is arisen. I'm just saying that the skill set is not necessarily the same.
Well, you took away my story about the.
Oh, sorry.
You took away my story about the Yarona, so thank you.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna ask you about it.
Somebody, there, yes.
Yeah, with respect to overall fear mongering, what do you think is the solution, let's say, between a market solution versus a regulatory solution?
Well, I mean, in terms of, it's difficult in terms of regulatory solutions. Part of the issue is, of course, you run into free speech very quickly, right? Is that it's not illegal and frankly shouldn't be, regulating any speech is problematic inherently, right? So, the other part of the problem, of course, is that a lot of these are, they are framed in a way that make them publicly acceptable, right? So at the point in which you say, no, you shouldn't be afraid of mass shootings. Like, well, of course you should be. What's wrong with you? Like, people are being killed. What's wrong with you? Like, okay, yes. Or the minute you say, the minute you try and counter that, like the migrant caravan, then they always have like, why do you hate America? It's like, why do you want the whole country to go to hell? So it's not a regulatory issue. It's more a matter of the again to my mind the bigger solution is agency. It's accepting the role that you play, all of us play, I play in sharing misinformation and in fear mongering. And it could be as simple as calling out fear mongering speech. And again, I'm not saying anything novel. I mean, people do this all the time. There's some fire and brimstone speech about how Trump says that we're a couple minutes away from being bombed by Iran, and the intelligence community assessment is no, that's not what it says. That's not accurate. And again, it's like you can try and mitigate it through facts, but there's no magic bullet here. There's not, you're not going to have somebody who's like who's necessarily going to is going to change their mind just because you send them a PDF of a CIA intelligence assessment on Iran, right? So what you can do is identify and call out the fear mongering. Say, okay, well, they're talking about how this crime wave of Somali immigrants and the voter election, right? The voter fraud, right? So Trump and the Republican Party have been hammering that for years. But there's widespread voter fraud. There's not. It's not. It's factually not true. Like this has been researched. This is not a subject of debate. There is not widespread voter fraud. Is there voter fraud? Yes. There's fraud in everything. Is it a significant threat to the electoral process? Absolutely not. So that's one way to do it would be to sort of address and say, okay, you can believe whatever you want. Here's the data. Here's the links to it. And again, doesn't always work, but I have seen it work. I have seen in real life and online, I've seen where someone says something and I or someone else says, that's actually not true. Here's a story, here's a link to it, and sometimes we're like, okay. Small victories, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering, how do you deal with the delegitimization of experts and expert opinions, like,
Yeah.
Fauci has been, villainized for various things, and this is just somebody who spent his whole career, learning things and doing
Yeah.
scientific method.
No, you're right. The delegitimization of expertise is definitely a real problem. Partly because This it gets back to what I was talking about before. Thanks for coming, guys. Is platforms, right? So if you can't tell the difference between Bill Nye and Ken Ham, if they're the same to you, right? If you can't tell the difference between Dr. Anthony Fauci and Joe Rogan in terms of who you should believe and what information they're bringing, then we're all, it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so at some point, you have to, the fact is that the people get their information from somewhere. Unfortunately, it's often social media, and I'm always continually surprised when I hear people talk about how, well, I don't watch the news, I don't read the news, I get the information from either Facebook or Twitter or late night comedy.
Yep.
So, as you know, it's like I actually subscribe to the Dead Tree version of the New York Times. This is today's paper, right? I get this in my driveway every day. I'm old school, take it or leave it. So I understand that I'm from a generation who that's just what we do. I also recognize that a lot of people, they don't do that. Like they haven't picked up a newspaper. They don't do it. So the problem, of course, here is that those filters, right? The filters of social media, the filters of whatever makes them into a late night monologue. They are themselves select. Even if you agree with it, even if you agree with Colbert, even if you agree with the Daily Show, and yeah, we're making fun of Trump, we're making fun of Biden, whatever. That's still a very narrow, twisted isn't the word. It's a joke. It's an entertainment. It's meant to be. It's meant to be funny. That's the reason you laugh at it. But in the process of making it funny, in the process of selecting how to frame it, you change the event, right? They're not lying to you. It's entertainment. So recognize that. When you see a meme on social media, or Instagram or Twitter, it's entertainment. It's clickbait. It's not. It's like, come on, guys, right? So I don't mean to get off track, but I think that's part of the answer is trying to sort of is recognize that there's a leveling aspect to it, where when you have a loss of expertise, when people don't agree that there are actual experts, then again anything is fair game, right? It's because again, you could be the director of the CIA or you could be someone random off the street. So one way to address that, and again, there's no magic bullet. One way is to say, okay, well, so I know you think that anybody's opinion is equally valid. So do you want to fly the plane? It doesn't matter, right? 15 years as a pilot, you can fly the plane, right? Oh well. Do you want to diagnose your the lump on your leg, or do you want to have a doctor do it? Oh, suddenly it's important to you. I see. So when it matters, when you need to make decisions that might affect your life or your health, then you care. But if it's a case where it's sort of your peripherally, it's some agenda like, well, whatever, the creationist, he knows what he's talking about. So that's one technique is to sort of not get an argument, sort of winnow them down. Like, so tell me, under what conditions do you want people to know what they're doing? I'm just curious. And how is it different than? And for example, if they're saying, well, Fauci and Rogan, here's what you find is that oftentimes, so if you and I've had this debate. Right? You say, okay, well, Dr. Fauci says this, Joe Rogan says this. Okay, well, Joe Rogan's he's a podcaster, right? He's a UFC commentator. He's actually pretty good at UFC commentating. Anyway, and so it's like, he's not a doctor. Yeah, but he's quoting doctors.
Yeah.
Okay, but you just said we can't believe doctors. So we can't believe the doctors, but we believe your doctors. Okay, so you do believe in doctors. Well, anyway. Yes? Yeah.
One thing that I've recognized is how fear affects your conduct. An example, years ago, if somebody would cut me off in traffic, there would be a sort of rage, traffic rage. I would react to it. Well, I don't do that anymore because there's crazy people out there that have guns. You have to respond as circumstances change.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, and certainly, yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, mitigating your road rage is a good consequence. If you are calmer, more zen about the world because of fear, good for you. But yeah, if it works for you, go for it.
But it's frustrating.
It's frustrating. Fair enough.
Well,
Yes.
from an evolutionary point, of course, we're hardwired for fear.
Mhm.
And that we can think about fear or choose not to, it makes it that much more difficult than, say, the coyote or something, you know,
Right.
being fearful.
Yeah, no, and that's.
So we're primed for the plucking.
Yeah, that's, I mean, like, we have lots of things against us, right? We have the selective outrage bias of social media. We have the news biases that selectively turn our attention to the dangerous, the scary, the fear-mongering, the threats. And then we also have our own psychology, as you mentioned, like where we are primed to be worried about the scary thing that might get to us. And we have all these things, but all these things are working against us, but we can reclaim that agency and make some steps towards mitigating this. Anyway. All right, well, thank you all for